When I discuss video games, I like to talk about them as having the potential to be more than just interactive entertainment. They can become a form of art. For a game to be elevated to an art form, it must achieve something rare. It must attain some quality, something that can't easily be put into words, but you know it when you see it. It makes you feel something completely unexpected. Maybe it challenges your intelligence, or makes you question your perspective. Maybe it immerses you so completely in the world and the story that it stops becoming fiction and causes you to form a real emotional investment, and you can't really explain why. I believe this game achieves that quality. At the end of this review, I'm going to try to put into words why I think this game rises to the level of art form. This is my review of Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is the latest title from Sucker Punch, the developers of Sly Cooper and Infamous. It's a story-driven action-adventure game that takes place in 13th century Japan during the Mongol Empire's invasion of the island of Tsushima. You take the role of Jin Sakai, Lord of Clan Sakai. Jin is a samurai warrior, which means he was raised with a rigid code of honor that he is under constant pressure to live up to, even in the face of death. Unfortunately, stoic honor and steadfast tradition won't be enough to save his people. Khotun Khan is ruthless, cunning, and intelligent, and he has brought hordes of Mongol warriors to the shores of Tsushima. To stop Khotun's onslaught, it'll take more than just a samurai, it'll take a ghost. Ghost of Tsushima was created as sort of an homage to Kurosawa films, and I'd have to say that it does the genre justice. Everything from the visuals to the storytelling invokes the feeling of watching old samurai movies, with the tense standoffs and compelling action, and the stylized story that manages to immerse you completely in the world of feudal Japan. In fact, Sucker Punch even included a Kurosawa mode, where the visuals turn black and white and take on a grainy film quality, and the audio becomes tinny and reminiscent of old movies, just to invoke that feeling of watching an old Kurosawa film. It's a nice touch and a cool addition, but if you want my advice, I'd say check it out once, be impressed, and then play the rest of the game in the standard mode because, well, this game is beautiful. Honestly, I've seldom experienced a game where just the visuals alone gave me an emotional overload. I mean, look at these screens, the colors and the particle effects. Look at this blood. The character models are great as well. Just watch this close-up conversation. The facial animations are amazing, and they even added beads of sweat running down their faces just to flex. The way some characters are animated in some of the non-story related cutscenes isn't so stunning. Most of the important cutscenes are great, but there is some where it's just two people having a conversation, and there's some really generic conversation animation, and it sort of jars you out of an otherwise immersive experience. Also, and this is really just something that I've noticed, and it personally confuses me, but in the last 20 years, we've been able to convincingly animate exactly two creatures: human beings and horses. Why? Why can't we figure out other animals? What? And that's not a criticism of this game. It's more an indictment of the practice of animation as a whole. Just how have we not managed to more convincingly animate other animals? It's weird to me. The story, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the strongest elements of Ghost of Tsushima. The story follows Jin as he struggles to find a way to stall the Mongol invasion, avenge his losses, and defeat his enemy. But he's also undergoing a metamorphosis, a personal transformation that not only affects how others see him, but how he sees himself. See, the samurai are more than just warriors. They're a warrior class. They were raised from birth in a rigid social structure that imposes strict expectations on them, chief among them being honorable conduct in combat, including both victory and defeat. A samurai treats his enemy as an honored guest even as they take their opponent's head. Their strict discipline, preternatural skill, and unimpeachable honor are all thought to be what sets a samurai apart from a conscripted soldier. A samurai strives to deserve their victory and meet their fate with honor and dignity. But Jin has seen his fate. He's seen the end of the samurai and the complete subjugation of his way of life. And the way of the samurai cannot save it. He needs to shed his upbringing and his attachment to honorable fighting in order to stand a chance against the Mongols. And it happens gradually as the story progresses. Jin as a character really does struggle with the concepts of dirty fighting, backstabbing, and deception. This is illustrated pretty well when he performs his very first dishonorable kill and he kinda sucks at it, even though he's been killing since he was a child. This is because he was taught a very specific way to kill, an honorable way, and he's never had to engage an enemy that couldn't face him before. Now, I normally don't like flashbacks as a storytelling device, but I did like how Sucker Punch used it here. Anytime Jin encounters a situation that challenges his character in service of his ongoing transformation to the ghost, we get a flashback to a relevant memory from his upbringing. Most of these flashbacks teach a lesson about samurai culture that has become embedded in Jin's being and is now being challenged by current events. They also give a cross-section of Jin's character that helps us show how and why Jin, as a samurai, could even contemplate fighting as the ghost. Jin's uncle, Lord Shimura, is the Jito of Tsushima and a stalwart samurai warrior. He represents Jin's past and serves as a constant reminder of the traditions and disciplines of the way of the samurai. He's the only father figure and family that Jin has, and his influence is felt throughout the story. While Lord Shimura represents the traditions of the samurai, Jin's new friend Yuna represents the willingness to set tradition aside in order to survive and prevail. She is a thief and a cunning fighter that uses stealth, deception, and anything else she can to gain an unfair advantage over her enemies. It's her influence that compels Jin to seek out a new way to fight the Mongol invaders. The story itself might be somewhat derivative. Some of the story beats feel a bit forced and a little bit rushed, but overall, this is exactly the kind of story I want to be told, and in exactly the way that I want it to be told to me. A story about personal transformation in response to an undeniable and traumatic shift in perspective against an epic backdrop of chaos and struggle. And the only way to make the experience any better would be to craft some kick-ass gameplay. So how did they do? Oh. Oh my god. Ghost of Tsushima has some of the greatest moment-to-moment gameplay that I have ever encountered. The weaknesses in gameplay are so completely overshadowed by its strengths that even once I encounter some clipping or a botched animation, I've completely forgotten about it by the time the next enemy raises their weapon. Gameplay can be easily divided into 4 categories: combat, stealth, open world, and platforming. Combat sees you facing off against 4 basic kinds of enemies: swordsmen, spearmen, men with shields, and the massive thick boys. But within those classifications, there are several different varieties, like the basic lightly armored spearmen, and then the more skilled buckler spearmen with a small shield that can block more attacks. And to defeat them, you'll have to develop new fighting styles that you'll learn by liberating towns and defeating camp leaders. There's no lock-on feature, so as a player, you'll have to point Jin in the right direction of the enemy you want to attack or defend against. Combat flows much as it does in the older Assassin's Creed games or the Batman Arkham games. You'll engage multiple enemies who surround you, and you'll have to use precise timing to counter their attacks and take them out one by one. You'll also utilize a number of weapons like the kunai throwing knives or smoke bombs to gain the advantage and take out multiple opponents. There's also a standoff feature where you can challenge the enemy to a classic quick draw showdown, and again, your timing will have to be just right in order to get that instant kill. There are also a number of one-on-one duels against overpowered opponents that will have you using only your katana and all the skills you've learned in a classic samurai style showdown. Overall, the combat system works pretty well, and combat is immersive and engaging, and god, just look at this blood pattern. Stealth is pretty much what you'd expect. You'll sneak around in tall grass and shadows to avoid detection and use an assortment of ghost weapons and techniques to silently kill Mongols without raising the alarm. From jumping assassinations to backstabs, to poisoning, to archery, to chain assassinations, there are a lot of options for stealth players to choose from, which makes stealth gameplay both viable and fun. One thing to note is that as you progress through the story, you'll be tasked with playing a certain way, but going through the open world, players can pretty much play the way that they want. Face opponents head on as a samurai, or strike from the shadows as the ghost. It's totally up to you, and there's no detriment to playing one way or the other. The open world is probably the best part of gameplay to me. It has the least amount of technical problems, and just moving through such a gorgeous world is incredible to experience. There is a fast travel feature, but I found myself not using it as often as I might have if the surroundings weren't so stunning. This might be the best time to mention the photo mode and how in-depth and complete it is. It definitely is one of the best photo modes I've seen in a video game, and I had to throw that in there. The open world hosts a variety of tasks and opportunities, like seeking out kame shrines, and composing haikus, and petting friendly foxes. Wait a minute. That guy looks a little bit familiar. That couldn't be. Saku? As you make your way through the world and complete side quests, you'll obtain new weapons and armor, and get the opportunity to upgrade them in certain towns. So there's definitely a lot to entice players to go out into the open world and interact with it. And then there's the platforming, which I think is the weakest part of the gameplay for me. The game takes more cues from Assassin's Creed here, where you can climb up sheer surfaces by finding handholds and making your way to the top. And most of the time this works, and sometimes it feels like it should have worked, but the game didn't recognize the handholds, so you just plummet down the mountain to your death, or right in the middle of a camp in front of enemies that you were trying to assassinate. I don't know, maybe I'm just a trash can, but I had some problems with the platforming. Okay, so at this point, you've got a pretty good idea of why I think Ghost of Tsushima is a good game. Awesome action, incredible visuals, and a story worthy of being called an epic. Now it's time for me to try to put into words why I think it's art. To me, art is something that can cause you to shift your perspective on life, or on social issues, on relationships. The best forms of art put you in different shoes and encourage you to view the same things from new angles. This is a game about the Mongol invasion of Japan, which is a historical fact. We already know about the Mongol invasion of Japan. We know about samurai culture and what they thought of those who fought without honor. This game wasn't really meant to teach us a lesson we didn't already know. It was meant to show us what we did know from a different perspective. Now, I've played games where you could look like a samurai, and I've played games where you could act like a samurai. This has to be the first game I've played where I felt like I was a samurai. Now, I felt everything that comes with being a samurai. I felt the stoic anticipation on the beaches of Komoda. I felt the righteous superiority as I struck down 3 of my poorly disciplined foes at once. I felt the energy and the spirit of my blade as I delivered the final blow in a duel, but I also felt the creeping despair as the way of the samurai steadily failed around me. I felt the pain in the eyes of my samurai peers as I strayed from their path. I felt the conflict within my own being as I began to embrace a dishonorable way of fighting. Every emotion, every internal struggle I had was handcrafted and expertly delivered by this game, and to me, that's what makes it art. Ghost of Tsushima is an intense story about the role of tradition, personal metamorphosis, and the answers to painful questions. What good is tradition if it cannot protect our people? Do we deserve to survive? Are we still warriors and protectors, or have we become something else? And in the end, will death redeem us?